directions. And I have not got the Western value system inside. It's an Oriental Eastern value system. But I use Western concepts, Western words, because I understand it. But I also have a different system in my mind. But I say a person who gets deculturalized, and I nearly was, so I know this danger. He loses his self-confidence. You get a sense of deprivation. For optimum performance, a man must know himself, know the world.
The late Lee Kuan Yew was well aware of the many challenges faced by Asians in Western societies, particularly on the issues of racial discrimination.
Asians in Western countries must swallow their pride from time to time, particularly in periods of economic slowdown, when racial discrimination becomes more blatant and racist abuse and attacks more prevalent. Some Asians complain that in many companies and organizations there is an invisible ceiling for Asian employees. In other words, beyond a certain point, you cannot be promoted. A glass ceiling. So this is a subject of considerable refinement amongst immigrants. They have developed a special vocabulary to describe their problems. However competent the Asians are, they seldom rise above a certain level. Furthermore, they tend to be shunted to technical and operational jobs rather than given key managerial appointments.
25歳から34歳の皆様、最近皆様の周りでコンサルへ転職する人が増えていませんか？現在、
But more troubling for him was the pervasive influence of Western culture and media, which he feared could lead Singapore to become a culturally lost nation.
We could become a pseudo-Western society. Not a real Western society. If you're a real Western society, that's another matter. But you become a pseudo-Western society, a fake one. That's a disaster. That is the ground undertow of your society. And it is our business to keep that undertow Asian. And therefore we have to preserve our society from being transformed. And when you have this offshore press trying to set the pace, we say, off with thee, this is my society.
Witnessing this erosion of cultural identity among Singaporeans and minorities in the West, he emphasized that those who believed they could simply reject their ethnic heritage in favor of a foreign culture were deluding themselves.
There is no such thing as I'm just a Singaporean. There is no such thing as I'm just an American. You're either a black American or a white American or a Hispanic American or an Asian American. And if you do not accept that, then you are deceiving yourself and you're in for a lot of unpleasantness.
Understanding these challenges, along with his diverse life experiences, reinforced his belief that embracing one's cultural language, traditions, and values was something to be proud of and worth preserving. In this video, let's explore Lee's journey of cultural identity and his message on the importance of why Singaporeans and the Asian diaspora should embrace their cultural roots in a rapidly changing world.
But if we are afraid that the West may laugh at us, then we'll become like the West, and then our ancestors will turn in their graves.
Though Lee's first language was English, he would realize early on in life that he would never truly be accepted in English society, as illustrated in this experience from his time as a university student.
I used to phone up for accommodation when I was a student in England. You know, my name is Lee. Also spelled the English way, L-E-E. And I used to, when I was in England, I spoke English like the English do. And the receptionist or the landlady can't tell the difference. So I make quite sure after my first experience, look, I am Chinese, you know. I gave her a way to say, I have no accommodation, or I'm sorry, we don't take Asians. Saves a lot of trouble.
In his memoirs, he recounts how his time in England as a minority transformed him into a born-again Chinese, revealing that others perceived him not as uniquely Singaporean or Malaysian, but instead simply categorizing him as Chinese.
Speaking as a Chinese who understands China.
First of all, I can't speak as a Chinese because I'm a Singaporean. I'm of Chinese ethnic stock. And I think this
Ethnic
is
Chinese,
crucial. I mean,
yeah.
if you ask me to speak as a Chinese...
As an ethnic Chinese.
Yeah, well, the Chinese People's Republic in Peking will be, I think, quite rightfully indignant, and so will the other aspirant in Taipei. I travel around the world often, and, people don't know that I come from Singapore, and they treat me as a Chinese, or as a Chinaman in the old days, as they used to call them. And they used to say, Chiang Kai-shek, in the middle 40s, and nowadays, of course, Mao Zedong.
Caught between two identities, he felt he was neither Chinese enough to fully connect with his Chinese classmates, nor English enough to fit in with the British. Upon returning to Singapore, he also noticed a stark contrast between the English-educated and Chinese-educated populations, noting that the Chinese speakers had less identity issues and exhibited greater self-confidence.
To keep our sense of identity, our sense of our place in the world, the second language is very important. Otherwise, you lose your confidence. Because however well you speak in English, you're not an Englishman.
Lee also drew parallels between English-speaking Singaporeans and the struggles faced by Chinese Americans as they attempt to reconnect with their cultural roots.
A Chinese American, he did a survey of American-born Chinese. They did not learn Chinese in school. When they went to college, China is rising, they want to learn Chinese. Those who spoke Putonghua at home with their parents, they had no trouble because they caught the sounds, they made the grade. Those who spoke English at home, they had the same trouble as the American-born American. Why? Because from young you have...
'Уважаемые граждане России,